AITA for exposing my dad's fiancée at the rehearsal after he disowned me? I'm Keith, 33, Alan's oldest son, and for the last 4 years, I've been the person in my family who tries to keep dinner conversations from turning into memorials or arguments. My older sister Rachel keeps old photo boxes organized like they're legal evidence. My younger brother Noah just wants everyone to get along, and my dad has been trying to convince himself that moving forward means never looking back. My mom, Karen, passed away 4 years ago. Saying that still feels strange, like I'm talking about somebody else's family. She was the person who made every holiday too loud, remembered everyone's favorite pie, and left handwritten recipes on index cards with little notes like, "Keith always adds too much pepper." She was not perfect. None of us are. But she was our mom, and for a long time after she was gone, the house felt like somebody had turned off the heat. Dad took it hard. He wasn't dramatic about it. He didn't throw things or make long speeches. He just got quiet. He would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee in front of him, staring at nothing. Rachel would come over and clean out the fridge because Dad forgot what was in it. Noah would bring takeout and try to make jokes that landed flat. I tried to keep things moving, mostly because if I stopped moving, I thought I might fall apart too. So when Dad started dating again, I was relieved. I know that sounds simple, but it wasn't. The first time he mentioned Marlene, he said her name like he expected us to flinch. We were having dinner, just the 4 of us, and he cleared his throat 3 times before saying, "I've been seeing someone. Nothing serious yet. Her name is Marlene." Rachel went still. Noah looked at me like I was supposed to answer for all of us. I said, "Are you happy?" Dad blinked, like that wasn't the question he expected. "I think I am." "Then I'm glad," I said. And I meant it. I never wanted Dad to spend the rest of his life eating dinner alone at a table set for 2. I wanted him to laugh again. I wanted him to have someone to call when the car made a weird noise or when he saw a dumb sign on the road and wanted to tell somebody. I wanted him to have a life. For the first few months, I wanted to like Marlene. Honestly, I almost did. She was careful at first. She brought a casserole the first time she came to dinner, even though none of us asked her to bring anything. She had a soft voice and a way of touching Dad's arm when he talked that made him sit up straighter. When she met Rachel and me, she said, "I know I can never replace your mom. I wouldn't even try." That line bought her a lot of patience from me. Rachel was more cautious. She is the type of person who doesn't call something a red flag until she has dated, labeled, and filed it. Noah, on the other hand, was ready to be happy for Dad immediately. He kept saying, "This is good. This is healthy. Dad needs this." I agreed. At first, the small things started so gradually that when I complained later, it sounded like I was being petty. One Saturday, I came over to help Dad fix a loose cabinet hinge, and the framed photo of Mom and Dad from their 25th anniversary was gone from the mantel. It had always been there. In its place was a candle and a little wooden sign that said "New Beginnings." I noticed it as soon as I walked in. Dad noticed me noticing it. "Marlene thought the room needed to breathe a little," he said. I looked around. "Where's the picture?" "Hall closet for now. We didn't throw it away." That was the first time I heard it in that context. I told myself it was one picture. I told myself Dad was allowed to change his own house. I told myself not everything had to be a shrine. Then the hallway photos changed. The picture of Mom holding Noah as a baby disappeared. The photo of Mom and Rachel laughing over a Thanksgiving turkey disappeared. The little frame near the kitchen door, the one with Mom in sunglasses at some backyard barbecue, was replaced with a picture of Dad and Marlene at a restaurant. Again, I tried to be reasonable. When I asked about it, Marlene smiled like she had been waiting for the question. "I'm not erasing her, Keith," she said. "I'm helping this house breathe again." Sometimes people get stuck in grief without realizing it. I hated the phrase immediately. Stuck in grief. It made grief sound like a bad habit, like leaving dirty dishes in the sink. Then Rachel called me one afternoon and said, "Did you know the family photo folder got renamed?" "What folder?" "The shared one Dad made years ago. It used to be Family Photos, Karen's favorites. Now it's Alan's new chapter." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Rachel sent me a screenshot. There it was. The same folder, hundreds of old pictures inside, now wearing a title that made my teeth clench. I called Dad that night. "Did you rename the folder?" I asked. He sighed before answering, which already told me enough. "Marlene helped me organize some things. It's just a folder name, Keith. It was Mom's folder. It was a family folder, named after Mom because she made it. He went quiet. Then he said, "Can we not do this every time something changes?" That became his line. Can we not do this? Be reasonable. Just this once. She makes me happy, Keith. Why can't that be enough? I wanted it to be enough. I really did. But Marlene kept pushing. Mom's memory box used to sit in the guest room closet. It wasn't on display. It wasn't in anyone's way. It had photo albums, her recipe cards, a scarf she wore every winter, a few birthday cards she saved, and a voicemail Dad had recorded onto an old device because he couldn't stand the idea of losing her voice completely. One day Rachel went looking for a recipe and couldn't find the box. Dad said it was in the garage. Rachel called me from his driveway, her voice so flat I knew she was furious. "It's on a shelf between Christmas lights and paint cans," she said. "Plastic bin. Label says Karen photos. Like she's seasonal storage." I drove over because I knew Rachel was about 2 seconds from saying something that would start a war. The garage smelled like dust and old cardboard. There were bins stacked along one wall. Christmas, kitchen stuff, tools, Karen photos. Rachel stood in front of the shelf with her arms crossed. Dad stood near the door looking exhausted. Marlene was behind him, wearing that careful expression she used when she wanted to look wounded but calm. "It's safer in here," Marlene said. "Less chance of things getting damaged while we reorganize." Rachel stared at her. "The garage is safer than a closet? It's temporary. Everything is temporary when you don't want to say what you're really doing." Dad snapped. "Rachel, enough." I stepped in before she could respond. "Dad, can we just put the box back inside?" Marlene touched his arm. "Alan, this is exactly what I mean. Every change becomes a trial." I looked at her. Because every change involves Mom disappearing. Her mouth tightened. Dad told me I was being unfair. I told him I was trying very hard not to be. We went in circles until I said the thing I still regret. "Mom would be ashamed if she saw you letting someone take her down piece by piece." The garage went silent. Dad looked like I had slapped him. I knew immediately that I had gone too far. Not because the point was wrong, but because I had aimed it where it would hurt most. I apologized before I left. I said, "I'm sorry for saying that. I shouldn't have used Mom like that. But I'm not sorry for noticing what's happening." Dad didn't answer. After that, things were colder between us. He still invited me to dinners, but they felt staged. Marlene would say something like, "We're trying to create a warmer energy in the house," and Dad would watch me like he expected me to throw a chair. I didn't. I learned to say less. At one family dinner, Marlene made chicken that was somehow dry and wet at the same time, and everyone pretended it was great. Rachel sat across from me, pushing green beans around her plate. Noah was telling a story about a coworker just to keep sound in the room. Marlene looked at Noah and me and said, "I just think the boys need a woman in the family again. Someone to bring softness back." Rachel froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. I set my glass down. We had one. We still know who she was. Noah said, "So anyway, the guy at work." Dad looked down at his plate like the mashed potatoes had suddenly become fascinating. Marlene's eyes got shiny, but no tears fell. She had that down to an art. "I only meant love doesn't have to stop with the past," she said. "Nobody said it did," Rachel replied. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside and asked why I had to make everything difficult. I almost laughed because difficult had become the word for anyone who refused to clap while Mom was erased. Then Dad and Marlene got engaged. He called me first, or at least he said he did. Maybe he called Rachel first, and she didn't pick up. I don't know. His voice was nervous and happy, and I didn't want to ruin that. "Congratulations," I told him. He let out this breath, like he had been holding it for months. "Thank you. That means a lot." And for a second, I thought maybe we could survive it. Maybe there could be a wedding, and Mom could still be Mom, and Marlene could be Marlene, and nobody had to pretend one canceled out the other. A few weeks later, Dad asked me to give a toast. He called on a Tuesday night. I remember because I was eating leftover pasta straight from the container and almost didn't answer. "Keith," he said, "I wanted to ask you something important." My stomach tightened. "Okay. At the wedding, I'd like you to say a few words. As my oldest son, it would mean a lot to me." I leaned back against the counter. "I can do that." He sounded surprised. "You can. I can wish you happiness, Dad." There was a pause. "That's all I'm asking," he said. That was not all he was asking. 2 days later, He emailed me a Google Doc titled Keith Toast Draft. At first, I thought it was just a few notes. Dad has never been good with speeches, so I figured he had written down names or memories he wanted included. Then I opened it. The first line that made me stop was, "Marlene brought light back into this broken family." The second was, "She became the mother figure we didn't know we still needed." The third was, "Because of her, we have finally learned to let go." I read those lines over and over until they stopped looking like words. Mother figure. Let go. Broken family. I called Dad right away. "I can't read this," I said. He didn't ask which part. That told me he already knew. "Keith, it's just a draft." "It's not a draft. It's a lie." His voice went tight. "Don't start. I can say I'm happy you're happy. I can say I wish you both well. I can't say Marlene became the mother figure we needed. We didn't need a new mom. We had one. Marlene must have been nearby, because I could suddenly hear her voice on the phone, soft and trembling. I am just asking to be accepted." I closed my eyes. Acceptance is not the same thing as applause. She made a tiny sound like she had been stabbed. Dad said, "You are stuck in the past, and you're dragging everyone with you." "No, I'm refusing to rewrite the past, so everyone feels comfortable." Marlene said, "I have done nothing but love your father, and somehow I'm still being punished for it." "Nobody is punishing you for loving Dad," I said. "I'm telling you I won't call a racing mom healing." Dad's voice changed then. It got lower, colder. "Can you just do this one thing for me?" I knew he wanted that sentence to land like a father's request, but it landed like a test. "No," I said. "Not that." The family group chat exploded that night. It started with Marlene. She wrote, "I'm heartbroken that Keith cannot stand seeing his father loved again. I hope tomorrow's wedding events could be about joy, but some people are still committed to pain." Tomorrow's wedding events. Like I had already kicked in the doors. One cousin replied, "Keith, this isn't the time." Another wrote, "Your dad deserves peace." Then someone else added, "Please don't make this about your mom." I stared at that one for a long time. Don't make this about your mom. As if the whole issue wasn't that Marlene kept making every space where mom existed about herself. Noah texted me privately. "Just be the bigger person for once." I answered, "Noah, that sentence did not come from you." He replied almost instantly, "You're making Dad choose between his future and your grief." That one hurt more because it sounded like him trying not to sound hurt. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before sending. I'm not asking Dad to choose between Marlene and Mom. I'm asking him not to make me choose between him and the truth. He didn't answer. Aunt Linda, Dad's older sister, stayed quiet in the chat. That hurt too, but in a different way. Aunt Linda had loved Mom. She still used Mom's stuffing recipe every Thanksgiving and called it Karen's because she said recipes were a kind of handwriting. But Aunt Linda believed in politeness the way some people believe in medicine. She thought enough quiet could cure anything. The next morning, Dad left me a voicemail. Not a text. A voicemail. I think he didn't want anything easy to screenshot. He forgot voicemails can be saved. His voice sounded tired, but the words were sharp. "Keith, I need you to think very carefully about what you're doing. If you can't stand up and support us, maybe it's better if you don't come. I don't want drama at my wedding. Marlene has cried all night because of you. I am asking you, as your father, to stop punishing me for wanting to be happy." I listened to it twice. Then I saved it. I was close to giving in. I hate admitting that, but I was. Not to the toast. I was never going to say those lines. But I thought about apologizing just to make the pressure stop. I thought about sending a watered-down speech, attending the wedding, smiling in photos, and going home feeling sick. Then Rachel called. She didn't say hello. She said, "Did you see the wedding program proof?" No. Why? Because she didn't just change a sentence. She removed Mom. My body went cold. Rachel forwarded me 2 PDFs. The first was an older wedding program proof Dad had shared weeks before. Near the bottom, under a small section for family acknowledgments, it said, "In loving memory of Karen." That was it. 5 words. No speech. No slideshow takeover. No black dresses or candles or sad music. Just a line. The second PDF was the newer version. That line was gone. In its place was, "We honor the past by choosing joy." I read it 3 times because it sounded exactly like Marlene. Soft enough to sound reasonable. Sharp enough to cut out the name. Rachel said, "I checked the email thread. It gets worse." How much worse? I'm sending it now. Sit down. I didn't sit down. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone while the email loaded. Rachel had been included on an early planning thread because Dad had asked her to send family photos for the slideshow. She hadn't looked closely at the thread for weeks because she was trying, like me, not to turn the wedding into a battlefield. The email from Marlene to the venue coordinator was short. Please remove the photos of Alan's late wife from the slideshow. This day should not feel like a memorial service. Alan's late wife. Not Karen. Not the mother of his children. Alan's late wife. I scrolled down. There was another email from Marlene. Keith and Rachel also feel the memory section would be too painful, so we are choosing to keep the focus on our new chapter. I had to put the phone down. Rachel stayed quiet on the line. Finally, I said, we never said that. No, she said. We did not. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether I was overreacting. Marlene hadn't just wanted a wedding day that wasn't overwhelmed by grief. If that had been the conversation, we could have had it. She didn't want a 10-minute tribute. She didn't want a candle lighting ceremony. She didn't want a long speech about Mom. She wanted Mom's name gone. And then she used Rachel and me as the excuse. Over the next few hours, Rachel and I went through everything we had. We did not hack anything. We did not break into accounts. We did not search Dad's phone or Marlene's laptop. We used what had been sent to us, what we were copied on, what existed in the group chat, and what we had personally received. Rachel had the original program proof with Mom's name. She had the revised one without it. She had the email chain where Marlene requested the change. She had the slideshow notes showing Mom's photos removed. I had the group chat where Marlene framed me as the bitter son who couldn't accept Dad being loved. I had Dad's voicemail telling me not to come if I couldn't praise them. Rachel had pictures from the garage of Mom's box on a storage shelf with a plastic label. Then Rachel sent me one more screenshot. It was a text Marlene had sent her weeks earlier after Rachel had objected to Mom's wedding photo being removed from the hallway. Marlene had written, Keith needs to stop acting like Karen is still the wife. Your father deserves a home that reflects the woman who is actually here. Rachel had never shown me that text because, in her words, you were already angry enough, and I was trying not to pour gasoline on it. I stared at that sentence until my eyes burned. Karen is still the wife. The woman who is actually here. Rachel came over that afternoon. She brought a printed folder, a USB drive, and the kind of calm rage only an older sister can produce. We sat at my table with my laptop open and built a short timeline. The title was simple, What Actually Happened Before the Wedding. Rachel pointed at the screen. If we do this, we do it clean. No screaming. No insults. Just proof. Good, I said. I'm tired of defending feelings when I have facts. We decided on a boundary before we decided on a confrontation. I texted Dad. I will not read the toast you sent. I will attend respectfully if I am welcome. I will not attack anyone. But I am also done being attacked quietly. If Marlene stops telling people I am trying to ruin your wedding, I will say nothing publicly and simply not speak. He didn't respond by text. An hour later, another voicemail. Keith, you're making threats now? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You always have to control the room when your mother comes up. Marlene is trying to help this family heal. If you can't support us tomorrow, maybe you need to take a hard look at whether you're coming as my son or as someone looking to punish me. Rachel listened to it while standing in my kitchen. Her face didn't change. When it ended, she said, print that transcript too. The rehearsal dinner was the next evening. It was held in a church hall with folding tables, cheap candles, and place cards that kept curling at the edges. There was a microphone near the front that made a little popping sound every time someone touched it. A projector sat in the corner on a rolling cart, and the DJ had his laptop open beside it. Everybody was smiling like people smile when they know something ugly is under the table. Marlene worked the room like she was campaigning. She hugged cousins she had met 2 times. She called Aunt Linda my sister in spirit, which made Rachel cough into her napkin. Dad looked nervous but determined, the way he always looked when he had decided ignoring a problem counted as solving it. Rachel and I sat near the end of a table, not quite in the corner, but close enough. She had her phone face down beside her plate. The PDF timeline was ready in the family group chat, unsent. The printed folders were in a bag by my feet. I had one copy in my hand under the table. Noah sat across the room with 2 cousins. He glanced at me once, then looked away. Dinner was awkward but survivable. Dry chicken, rolls wrapped in napkins, salad nobody touched. People kept asking Dad if he was excited. He kept saying, "More than you know." Then Marlene stood up. She tapped the microphone, and it screamed. Everyone laughed politely. She put a hand to her chest. "Sorry," she said. "I promise I won't talk long. I just wanted to say how grateful I am. Tomorrow is not just about a wedding. It's about healing. It's about choosing joy. It's about letting the past sleep so the living can love each other fully." Rachel's hand moved to her phone. Marlene kept going. "I know change is hard. I know some people struggle when a family begins a new chapter. But I also know Alan deserves peace. He deserves a home filled with love, not grief." The room got quieter. Then she looked directly at me. Some people would rather worship grief than support their living family. It was one of those moments where sound seemed to pull away from the room. Fork stopped. Someone coughed. Aunt Linda whispered, "Marlene." Marlene's eyes shone. Again, no tears fell. Dad stood up before I could decide whether to speak. He didn't take the microphone. He just raised his voice enough for everyone to hear. "Keith, I have tried. I have tried to be patient. But if you can't support us tomorrow, maybe you shouldn't call yourself my son." Aunt Linda said, "Alan." He ignored her. Rachel looked at me, and I knew she was asking without words, "Are we doing this?" I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not peace. Not satisfaction. Just the cold, clear feeling of reaching the end of pretending. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I said, "You asked me to speak, so I'll say the part you left out." Marlene's face changed immediately. Not sadness. Not confusion. Fear. Rachel hit send. Phones started buzzing around the room. I took the folder from under my arm and handed the first copy to Aunt Linda. Then I handed another to the cousin beside her, and another to Dad's best friend, who had been glaring at me all night like I was a problem he could solve with a stern look. I was willing to attend, I said. I was willing to be respectful. What I was not willing to do was lie and call erasing my mother healing. Marlene made a wounded sound. "Keith is trying to humiliate me because he never wanted me here." I looked at her. "For the first few months, I defended you. I told myself change was normal. I told Rachel not to start a fight over every picture. I told Noah Dad deserved to be happy. You didn't lose my support because Dad loved you. You lost it because you tried to turn my mother into an inconvenience." Dad snapped, "Enough." "No," Rachel said, standing too. Her voice was calmer than mine. "Not enough. Everyone has been texting Keith for 2 days based on a lie. So everyone can read the truth now." Phones kept buzzing. I saw Noah pick his up. I saw his eyebrows pull together as he scrolled. Aunt Linda opened the folder with careful hands. The first page was the original program proof. I said, "Page 1 is the original program. It includes one line. In loving memory of Karen." Page 2 is the revised program. Her name is removed and replaced with "We honor the past by choosing joy." Marlene said, "It was a design decision." Rachel said, "Page 3 is your email asking for that design decision." Aunt Linda read silently, then looked up. I continued. "Page 3 shows Marlene asking the venue coordinator to remove photos of Alan's late wife from the slideshow because, quote, the day should not feel like a memorial service." Page 4 shows Marlene telling the coordinator that Rachel and I requested the removal because it would be too painful. We never said that. Dad's face went pale. He looked at Marlene. "You told them Keith and Rachel asked for that?" Marlene's mouth opened, but no words came out. Rachel said, "We never asked for that. She used us." Aunt Linda looked at Dad. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Alan, did you know she told them the kids wanted Karen removed?" Dad didn't answer at first. Then he said, "I didn't know she told them that." Marlene turned toward him. "I was trying to protect the day. You were stressed. Everyone was making me feel like there would be a ghost at our wedding." "A ghost?" Rachel said. Marlene flinched. I kept my voice steady because if I raised it, she would use that. Page 5 is the text Marlene sent Rachel saying I needed to stop acting like Karen is still the wife. Page 6 is the family group chat where she told everyone I couldn't stand seeing Dad loved again. Page 7 is Dad's voicemail telling me maybe I shouldn't come if I couldn't praise her. Dad looked at me then. Shame moved across his face, but I didn't let it soften me too much. Not yet. Marlene started crying for real this time. Or at least loudly. "This is cruel," she said. "You brought folders to a rehearsal dinner. You planned this. Yes, I said. I plan not to scream. I plan not to insult you. I plan to use only what you wrote and what Dad said. She shook her head. You're ruining the wedding. No, I said. You tried to turn my mother into an inconvenience. I just brought the receipts. The room broke open after that. Not loudly at first. It was more like a wave of whispers. People reading. People scrolling. Somebody said, "Wait," she said. Keith asked for it. Someone else muttered, "That's not what we were told." Dad's best friend, who had been glaring at me earlier, stared at the folder like it had personally offended him. One of Marlene's bridesmaids said, "Marlene, is this real?" Marlene wiped her face. "It's out of context." Rachel said, "Then give us the context where you didn't lie." Nobody laughed, but the silence landed hard. The DJ, poor guy, looked like he wanted to melt into the wall. The venue coordinator wasn't at the dinner, but Rachel had forwarded the email chain to herself and to the group. When one cousin asked if the chain was real, Rachel said, "The coordinator can confirm." She already replied to me this afternoon when I asked for the original files. She opened her phone and read the coordinator's response. "Hi, Rachel. Yes, the revised slideshow notes and program changes were requested by Marlene on the dates shown below. The original family acknowledgement included Karen's name as provided by Alan. Let me know which version should be used for the final print." Aunt Linda closed the folder. For a moment, I thought she would tell everyone to calm down. That would have been very Aunt Linda. Keep the peace. Lower your voice. Not here. Instead, she looked at Marlene and said, "This is not healing. This is erasing." Marlene recoiled like Aunt Linda had slapped her. Dad sat down slowly. He looked older than he had an hour before. Marlene leaned toward him. "Alan, please. You know what I've been dealing with. You know how hard it's been to feel like there's room for me." Dad didn't look at her. He looked at the program proof in Aunt Linda's hand. "Karen being remembered for 30 seconds was not stealing your marriage," he said. That was the first thing he had said all night that sounded like my father. Marlene's face hardened. It lasted only a second, but I saw it. "So now you're going to let him do this?" she asked. "You're going to let your son humiliate me in front of everyone?" Dad's voice was rough. "Did you lie and say Keith and Rachel asked to remove Karen?" "I was trying to avoid pain." "Did you lie?" She looked around the room, searching for someone to rescue her. Nobody moved. "Finally," she said, "I made a decision under stress." Rachel muttered, "That's not a yes, but it isn't a no." Two people in the wedding party stepped away from the head table. One of them said, "I'm not standing up there tomorrow unless there's a real apology. Not that group chat stuff. A real one." Another cousin, the same one who had texted me that Dad deserved one happy day, came over and handed me the folder back like it was fragile. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We only heard what they told us." I didn't know what to say, so I nodded. Noah was still sitting across the room, staring at his phone. The dinner ended without ending. Nobody announced it. People just started leaving in small groups, whispering by the doors, hugging Dad awkwardly, avoiding Marlene's eyes. Rachel and I walked outside into the parking lot where the air felt too cold after the haul. I was unlocking my car when Noah came out. He stopped a few feet away from us, hands in his pockets, looking like he had aged 10 years in one dinner. "Keith," he said. I waited. He swallowed. "I thought you were making everything harder." Rachel said nothing. Noah looked at the ground. "I thought I was keeping the peace." I said, "You were keeping her version of it." He nodded like the words hurt because they were true. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't realize I was helping her pressure you. I should have asked you before I believed her." I wanted to be generous. I also wanted to ask him how many times I had to prove I wasn't the villain before he stopped volunteering me for the role. What came out was, "Next time, ask." He nodded again. "I will." Rachel finally spoke. "And don't tell grieving people to be the bigger person when someone is standing on them." Noah almost smiled, but it collapsed before it became anything. "Yeah, I deserve that." The next morning, the family group chat was silent in a way I had never seen before. Usually somebody sent coffee memes or weather complaints or reminders about rides. That morning, nothing. Then Dad sent a message. "The wedding is postponed. I need time to sort through what happened. I am sorry to everyone who traveled and prepared. I especially owe Keith and Rachel an apology." Marlene sent something 15 minutes later. "I am sorry anyone felt hurt by decisions made under stress. My intention was always to create a joyful day and help this family move forward." Rachel replied before I could stop her. That is not an apology. For once, half the family agreed with her. Aunt Linda wrote, "An apology names what was done." Noah wrote, "Keith and Rachel didn't ask for Karen to be removed. That needs to be said clearly." Marlene didn't respond. Later that day, Dad texted me privately. "I was wrong. I let being lonely make me unfair to you and Rachel. I don't know how to fix it yet, but I know I was wrong." It wasn't poetic. It wasn't perfect, but it sounded like him, and that mattered. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to punish him with silence. Part of me wanted to drive over and demand he explained every time he looked away while Marlene moved Mom's life into boxes. Part of me wanted to forgive him immediately because he was my dad and I was tired. Instead, I waited until the next morning and wrote, "I can support you being happy. I won't support you rewriting Mom into a problem. If you want to talk, we can have dinner privately. Not with Marlene. Not as a performance. Just us." He replied, "Okay, I understand." I didn't know if he fully understood, but it was the first time in months he hadn't argued with the boundary. Rachel met with him before I did. She brought the original program proof and Mom's recipe box, which she had taken from the garage after the rehearsal dinner. Dad cried when he saw the recipe cards. Rachel told me later he kept touching the one for apple cake like it might disappear. When I finally had dinner with him, it was uncomfortable. We sat across from each other, and neither of us knew what to do with our hands. He looked smaller without Marlene beside him, not weaker exactly, just less shielded. He said, "I wanted to be happy so badly that I made you carry the cost." I looked down at my glass. He continued, "Every time she said the house felt sad, I thought maybe she was right. I thought if I defended old photos too hard, it meant I wasn't ready to move on. And I was scared that if I wasn't ready, I would be alone again." That was the closest he had come to the truth. I said, "Mom's pictures weren't keeping you from loving someone else. They were just pictures, memories, proof that a life happened before the new chapter everyone kept talking about." He nodded. "I know." "Do you?" I asked. "Because you let her make it seem like we were selfish for wanting Mom's name in one line of a program. You let me get called bitter. You left me voicemails instead of asking what was actually going on." His face tightened, but he didn't defend himself. "I know," he said again, quieter. I didn't hug him after dinner. I think he wanted me to. I think part of me wanted to. But I had spent too long smoothing over his discomfort, and I wasn't going to end that conversation by pretending one apology put everything back. A week later, Dad ended the engagement. I didn't hear it from him first. Aunt Linda heard it from Dad, Rachel heard it from Aunt Linda, and I heard it from Rachel because apparently even family collapse still travels through the same tired channels. Dad called me that night. "It's over," he said. I didn't ask if he was okay because the answer was obvious and complicated. He said Marlene kept insisting the real issue was my public disrespect. She said I had poisoned the family against her. She said she couldn't marry into a family where the children had that much power over their father. Dad told me he asked her one more time to apologize directly for lying about Rachel and me. She said, "I won't apologize for trying to make our wedding about us." That was it, Dad said. I realized she still thought Karen was competition. I should have realized it earlier. I said yes, you should have. He took that without arguing. He did not become a different man overnight. He still avoided hard conversations when he could. He still sometimes said things like, "I just wish none of this had happened." And Rachel would say, "It happened because people made choices." But for the first time in a long time, he stopped asking us to pretend. Mom's pictures went back up. Not all of them. The house did change, because life does that whether you want it to or not. But the anniversary photo returned to the mantle. The hallway had a mix of old pictures and newer ones. The memory box came out of the garage and went back inside where it belonged. Noah apologized again a few weeks later, this time without looking like he wanted to crawl out of his skin. He said, "I think I confuse peace with quiet." I said, "A lot of people do." He said, "I'm working on it." I believed him. Mostly. Some relatives still think I went too far by exposing Marlene at the rehearsal dinner. They think I could have pulled Dad aside privately, or waited until after the wedding, or spared everyone the scene. I understand why people say that. Public truth is messy. It embarrasses more than the liar. It makes everyone who believed the lie feel foolish, and nobody enjoys that. But I did try privately. I told Dad I wouldn't lie. I told him I would attend respectfully. I told him I would stay quiet if they stopped using my grief as a weapon. Marlene chose the microphone. Dad chose the threat. Rachel and I chose the folder. I never gave the toast. The original speech Dad wanted me to read is still in my email somewhere. Sometimes I think about deleting it, but I keep it the same way Rachel keeps old photo boxes, as proof. Not proof that Dad is evil, because he isn't. Not proof that Marlene was a cartoon villain, because she wasn't. Proof that soft words can still be cruel. Proof that healing can be used as a weapon when the wrong person gets to define it. I have one of Mom's framed photos in my home now. It's the backyard barbecue one that used to sit near Dad's kitchen door. Mom is wearing sunglasses and laughing at something outside the frame. There is nothing dramatic about the picture. No halo. No perfect lighting. Just my mother, alive, mid-laugh, before any of us knew we would someday have to argue for her right to remain part of our own family. Dad and I still have dinner sometimes. Not every week. Not with forced cheer. We are rebuilding slowly, and I make no promises I can't keep. He apologizes without adding, but more often now. I correct him when he slips into pretending, and he usually catches himself. Rachel says that is progress. Rachel also says if he ever lets someone put Mom in the garage again, she will personally label him seasonal storage. I believe her. As for Marlene, she left the group chat after Aunt Linda asked her one last time to give a real apology. She never did. A few people stayed in touch with her for a while, but not many. The image she had worked so hard to build, the gentle woman healing a broken family, didn't survive contact with her own emails. I don't feel proud of the scene at the rehearsal dinner. Proud is the wrong word. I felt sick afterward. I felt sad for Dad. I felt angry at myself for shaking when I got home, even though I had stayed calm in the room. But I don't feel guilty. I didn't try to ruin my father's wedding. I refused to let them build it on my mother's erasure. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.